What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/MaliciousCompliance. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called, Military Spouse Accuses Me of Cheating on My Husband. With my husband. I've been living in Japan for a little over 2 years with my husband. He was born here and we decided to move to his hometown. It's a small city, but there's enough to do without getting bored. I'd describe us as an AMWF couple, or Asian man, white female for those who don't know. It's not so common in Western countries, and it can feel like we are some rare shiny Pokemon, as AMWF in rural Japan, lots of staring, occasional secret picture, or even small chats if an old lady is brave enough to approach us. It can feel uncomfortable eating at a restaurant because kids will turn around in their seat and stare at us the whole time with an open fish mouth. Coincidentally, there's a small US military base located in this city. The closer you are downtown, the more American families you'll see. I'm constantly mistaken for being military by Americans and Japanese, which is understandable. Besides myself, I only know 5 other interracial marriages here. It's always locals who ask about my American husband when I'm out alone, which I respond in Japanese, Watashi no oto wa Nihonjin desu. Koko ni sundemasu. Translated to, my husband is Japanese and I live here. Or something along those lines. Americans never ask about my marriage, as they assume my spouse is American. When we are together in public, we do abnormal couples behavior, such as holding hands. No, couples rarely hold hands in public, let alone say I love you. We don't go downtown too often since it's all pay to park and it's a nightmare to find a place. It was a beautiful, warm day for the first time in months, but we decided to battle for a spot and walk around the shops. The crowd was heavy since the weather was great and winter was ending. The season for new American families to move here just finished, so I'm sure this was many people's first time to leisurely walk and shop outside. We find a parking spot and made our way to the outside shops. Of course, we are holding hands and casually talking and laughing. Wow! I hear this from an American woman about 10 feet behind us. You should know that a Japanese stereotype against Americans is that we are rudely and obnoxiously loud. And this wow was loud enough for me to turn my head around at the noise. She was with 2 other moms who had like 3 kids each. They were staring at me, but perhaps we just accidentally made eye contact at the right time. Seriously? Another little homewrecker is doing this in public? Chill, woman. You're so loud even I can hear you. We find a table nearby at the Starbucks outside. We're just enjoying our drinks when the same group of women approached us with their strollers in tow. They definitely had some sort of purpose with something to say to us. Let's call her Ona, or woman in Japanese. Excuse me, but you need to keep whatever you're doing in your messed up home. Doing that in public in front of families to see is disgusting and immoral. My kids don't need to see such a bad display of marriage. I'm so confused, as was my husband, who can speak English. Who knew drinking coffee outside was a crime against humanity and marriage? I'm sorry, what did we do? Oh, you know exactly what you're doing. She points to my wedding ring. No, I don't. Good Lord, does your husband know about this? Is he on a ship right now? That's so like a dependopotamus. Her friends laugh. In case you don't speak military, a dependopotamus is slang for a military wife who stays home all day, doesn't clean, uses their spouse as an ATM, and looks like Jabba the Hutt. It dawns on me, she thinks I'm a military spouse and I'm cheating on my American husband. I started laughing because she's suggesting I'm cheating on my husband with my husband. This is my spouse. I'm actually not part of the military community and have a Japanese visa. Ona looks at my significant other up and down. The 2 women behind her apologize, but the Ona didn't believe it. No one would voluntarily want to live in this little town. Nice try, but you're not representing the military community. You make all of us wives look like whores. Who is your husband and what's his rank? Also, I need your dependent ID. My husband is a high rank, so he'll make sure your husband is aware of your infidelity. She pulls out her phone to probably type my response. I'm offended since this is actually a nice place to live and very open to foreigners. Look, my husband's name is Ray, not his real name, I don't want to reveal personal info, and he's sitting right here. I'm not going to show you my military ID since I don't have one, and you're not the police. As proof, you can obviously see our wedding bands match, and here's a picture. I show her my phone screen, which is of us in traditional Japanese clothes for our wedding day. Her eyes became huge at the picture. Her two friends and their spawn have already started walking away. Why are you in a relationship with him? You should be in a normal relationship and start having a family with American kids. She says some other statements which I'd consider racist against the Asian race. It's so ironic because we are in Japan. And she's fussing about me being married to a Japanese man. My husband has been quiet throughout the whole exchange and says to me we should go. I agree and stood up. Stop! The things you are saying are extremely offensive. I was part of the military community myself some years ago, and what you're doing is against spousal conduct. She smirked. Go ahead and tell people what I did then. My high-ranking husband is an E7, and everything will be swept under the rug no matter what happens. You can't touch me. So that's what I did. Note, this is a small military community. Someone does something minor and it's talked about between wives like chickens. Later that day, I run into my friend who works on the base, and she's well known in the community for being one of the main event coordinators. I don't miss this chance to comply with Ona's demands and explain to my friend about the exchange and how it made my husband extremely uncomfortable with her remarks. She asked me if this person looked like so-and-so, to which I said yes. My friend rolls her eyes. She just arrived a couple of months ago and is already causing problems with rumors and trauma. Looks like we have a racist too. I'll make sure what she said is passed on. It's been half a year later, and I didn't hear anything about Ona again since I distanced myself from making military friends here. I've only been in my new city for a little over 2 years and experienced more drama for military families than I have my whole high school career. That is, until now. Last week, I ran into my friend who's getting ready to leave back to the United States. We had a little discussion about her moving and my family planning, and dropped a bombshell. Do you remember Ona, who accused you of cheating on your non-existent military spouse and called your husband a racist name? Of course, I haven't heard anything from her since. Well, I mentioned we were already having problems with her not long after she got here. I told my boss that there's a person who's bothering and threatening civilians and asking for IDs, which isn't allowed for someone with her status. My boss was extremely interested after I mentioned her name because Ona was scheduled for an interview in my department. I suggested we look at her social media accounts from her past behavior because we don't tolerate racism. It was easy to find her Twitter and Facebook, particularly Facebook since we have many mutual friends. Her SNS was shocking. While she set her Facebook to private, her Twitter was littered with malicious tweets and retweets. This included racism slang for many nationalities, colorful language, and using her husband's military rank to bully others. She made it very clear that she wants to see her current city burned to the ground. And why would anyone want to learn Japanese since it sounds terrible? We printed some of the more extreme things she posted and we still invited her to the interview. Oh, and did I mention my boss is Japanese? So she comes into the interview, which I was part of. I asked 3 good things about her, which she says, dependent, gets things done, and friendly. My boss just looked at her for a second before he pulled out her tweets and asked her to explain how she can friendly serve the local community if she hates it so much. Ona was floored and said someone hacked into her account despite there being at least 3 years of slanderous tweets. We thanked her for coming and said we can't accept an employee with this conduct. As far as I know, she's still not working because some spouses found her Twitter not long after this interview and was shared in all departments. No one will touch her application now. So all of this was discovered because I told you about her accusations? Yes, and she's kind of an outcast socially right now because she cheated on her husband a couple of months ago. There you have it, folks. Because one person couldn't mind their own business, they lost a potential job and had their social media exposed. Super ironic since she became the dependopotamus and adulterer, the same thing she accused me of. It really sucks that we Americans have established such a negative stereotype abroad. And people like that definitely do not help at all. Japan is a really beautiful place with really cool people, really polite people, low crime rates, the whole freaking shebang. We don't need to introduce our Western toxicity and make everyone a jerk, because we've got enough of that here. And doing what that woman did here is very frowned upon. I know in New York, you're used to, every 3 feet, some crazy person yelling at another crazy person, okay? Obviously, it's a joke. Depends on where you are, but still. In Japan, that's not very common at all. People like to keep to themselves, which is understandable because other people suck. But yes, do not cheat on your military spouse. That's not nice. This story's called, "My Boss Wanted Me to Train My Replacement, but I Didn't Work There Anymore." Hey Reddit! Not 100% sure this counts, but I want to share my story. I used to work in a grocery store back in 2016. I was 16, 17 at the time. I don't work retail anymore, but I wanted to share this story I still remember to this day. It was a pretty normal night right before the end of my shift. I was one of the few closers at my store, so it was just me, my supervisor, and a cashier. I worked the self-checkout customer service desk. My supervisor had just collected the tills and was in the back counting, and I was starting my rounds to take back the non-perishables that were left at the registers. I also might add that our store had terrible camera placement. Basically, it showed all the registers and the supervisor's office door, which was where the sofa was. This is important later. After putting up all the items that were left at the registers, I did my final checks of the store to make sure there were no misplaced or damaged items on the floor. I find a case of beer that was leaking in our beer wine section, and since I wasn't sure how damaged the bottom of the cardboard case was, I had to drag it to the front so I could inform my supervisor about the damaged item before taking it to the back. We kept a cart full of damaged items to be taken out by the morning crew. Since the supervisor's office is locked while they're counting the tills, I call over to her and let her know that there was a damaged case of beer, and I was taking it to the back. She responds with an absent, "Okay, sounds good." So I take it to the back, place it with the rest of the damaged items, and I go back to the front to see if there's anything else my supervisor needs me to do before I clock out. There isn't. Next couple of days are fine as I finish up the week and wait for the next week's schedule to be posted, and I find out that I'm not scheduled for next week. I figure there must have been a mistake as there was someone working at the same grocery store who shared my first name. I go upstairs to my manager's office and ask him about the schedule and why I wasn't scheduled. He responds with, my bad. I forgot to tell you that you are suspended until the investigation is over. By the way, can you train your replacement today on the self-checkout or customer service desk?" Me, confused and annoyed at the moment, don't really pay attention to the second part of his comment and ask him what he was talking about. "We caught you stealing that case of beer you took to the back, and until the police investigation is complete, you won't be working here anymore. Please turn in your uniform, name tag, and badge." I am furious, but I decide that I would just go with it with a bit of malicious compliance in the situation. Well, boss man, I took the damaged case of beer to the back to be thrown out in the morning as per procedure. But since I won't be working here anymore, I guess you'll just have to find someone else to train my replacement, since I clearly can't be trusted. I was the only person who could train someone for the customer service desk other than him. His jaw dropped. The look on his face was priceless as I took off my uniform and handed him my name tag and override card. I then proceeded to walk out, get in my car, and drive home. About 2 years later, I go in the army and am going for a job that required a security clearance. Guess what shows up? That suspension with an unfinished police report and the tapes from the security camera. I sit there with the interviewer as we watch the tape together, clearly showing that I did not steal anything. Needless to say, I was approved for my clearance. I ask if I can get a copy of the tape, and my interviewer agrees. It took 2 years, but I finally had the evidence I needed to sue for wrongful termination. But as the time is well over in the statute of limitations, I am unable to actually do anything about it. Either way, I decide to go pay my old workplace a visit over my Christmas block leave, and a couple people recognize me, including my old boss. He tells me that thieves aren't welcome in his store and that I need to leave or he would be calling the police. I told him to call them and that his claim would surely hold up when I showed them the copy of the video footage of me stealing. The store had one of my favorite muffins, and honestly, I really wanted one since they are only made there. The police got called and did nothing, and I got 3 muffins free of charge thanks to my favorite supervisor. Worth it. Okay, I am completely uneducated when it comes to how these wrongful termination investigations work. However, I am fairly confident that if you did sue for wrongful terminations, that would be enough justification to gain access to the footage. So, I mean, you could have done something earlier, but obviously you got your muffins as a good enough settlement. So, but of course, I could be wrong, but that's what you guys are for. Correct me if I am. This story's called Homeless Guy Takes a Cruise. Back during the first Gulf War, my wife and I were engaged and had a wedding and honeymoon cruise to the Caribbean set up. All expenses paid, food, transportation, etc. On those things, they have all-you-can-eat buffets in a nice dining room. Both of us were active military. Well, the military announces they are sending her over to the Gulf. I stayed stateside but had leave canceled. They ship out 3 days before the wedding and cruise. We were able to reschedule the wedding. Caterer, flowers, reception, DJ, they were all cool. So I called the cruise line and asked to reschedule. They said no, and the tickets were non-refundable. I tried to explain we were active military going to war. Nope, no deal. I speak to a supervisor. Nope. Ask the military to help out. No deal. We knew nobody in the area, and none of our family could take the cruise. We were screwed. So we went to nearby San Francisco, went to the worst area, found the dirtiest, most malnourished, homeless 2 people we could find, lice, bad smell, shopping cart, the whole thing. Gave them the tickets and told them to eat well. The only caveat is I wanted them to send me a postcard so I know they went. Gave them a stamped, addressed envelope. Got a nice car from Martinique. I'll bet the cruise people were bummed. Okay, first off, horrible shame that this happened before the internet and cancel culture was a big thing. Because while cancel culture has been tremendous in, bringing people to justice, it also can get very ridiculous sometimes. Some people just, wow. But in this case, this would go viral 100%. And Ryan Reynolds would be like, yo, let me pay for your wedding and pay for your cruise so you get your money back and all this crap. And that freaking cruise line would just be absolutely boycotted by all the military fans, which they should be. Crying shame, but I hope you guys had an amazing wedding otherwise. And that was very thoughtful of you to give it to the homeless people. I'm sure they had a blast. However, some people might say that your reasoning for giving it to the homeless people is a little screwed up. However, in the end, they did get a great vacation. Hopefully, the staff was accommodating. And you got to give what you thought was a big FU to these cruise line people. However, you might want to be a bit more aware of what you're posting, especially to the internet with, like I said, cancel culture. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.